Oregon Moto John. We're on the Husky today. Um, it always amazes me how this bike likes to rev out. That is the advantage of a motocross-based engine. Is wow, it's smooth. The 350 itself, its characteristics is smooth, high revving, and just makes power. It's so much fun to ride. There's some thunderclouds moving in here. Um, may dump on me a little later, but I'm not that far away from home. I'm about 35 minutes from home, so if I get dumped on, it's okay. I could tough that out. But much further than that, it would get a little miserable. But I was just riding, and as many of you know, I've tried other bikes, and it just every time I get on this Husky, this 350, I really like how this four-stroke likes to rev. But like I mentioned before, you got to do your oil changes, but that's what makes this worth it, is just performance. It likes to rev so smooth. The transitions from low to mid-range to top end, it's just seamless how good these bikes run now. I can decide when I'm going to break loose the back end, when I'm not. I think it's discussed enough. Well, actually, it probably is discussed enough, but let's do it some more. But on some of these motocross based engines, maybe it isn't discussed enough, but I find on this, these motocross-based engines, like let's say a KTM 350, 500, and the Husky, 350, 501. Their oil capacity, and we could throw a Honda 450L in there, because it's basically the 450R motocross bike engine with a few tweaks to pass emissions. But generally speaking, these bikes don't hold much more than a quart of oil. And so if you think about it, that's a quart of oil, 1 quart. I know I keep saying that, but think of that. That's 1 quart, or maybe 1.2 in some cases. That's lubricating your gearbox, all your gears, and your transmission, your clutch. Dirt bikes have a wet clutch, so when you're slipping your clutch on a trail or something, then you're having to put that debris into your gearbox. Now, on a two-stroke, that gearbox is that oil is just lubricating the gearbox and the clutch, which is kind of nice. It's not going to your piston and your crank. However, on a four-stroke, that's going to your piston, your crank, up to your top end, your timing chain, your valves. Most of these bikes have extremely complicated top ends. I've taken a few apart thinking I was going to be an expert on timing them, and once I disassembled them, and it's hard not to get off one tooth. You got to really watch what you're doing. But all I'm trying to say about all that is they're very complicated, and there's lots of moving parts: valves, timing chains, cams. Cams are a wear item that are pushing on your valves to open and close them. So all that debris in your motor is circulating around. Yes, you have a filter which will catch some of the larger stuff, which is good. But I found when I do oil analysis on my motorcycles, they're hard on the viscosity. They're just the gears shearing on things, and all the little parts. I think motorcycles are some of the hardest. They're very hard on oil. I'll put it that way. I think they're one of the hardest engines on motor oil that exists. I'm sure there's jet turbine engines and other things that are worse, but as far as just what most of us will encounter, I think motorcycle engines work extremely hard. High RPMs, and then all those gears and clutch. So all that being said, there are a lot of problems that can be prevented if you just change your oil. From scorching of the cams to transmission issues to certainly cylinder wear and scorching, valve guides, timing chain issues, but you have to keep clean oil in there, or relatively clean. So what do we do with all that? Well, on this particular bike, I do 5 to 10-hour oil changes. If I'm in on tight trails where I see my engine temperature is getting hot, today I'm running pretty cool because I'm doing a lot of gravel roads, working my way to the trails. But if I see my temperatures getting up to a couple hundred degrees and sticking there and above, because I'm doing a lot of single track, then I might change oil when I get back. Or if I ride the sand dunes on my 450 and I'm not wide open throttle but pretty close to it all day long, okay, I'm changing the oil when I get home. So just you can do what works best for you. But now there are other bikes that are more like my Honda 300L, kind of has more of a street bike engine design. Okay, those you can kind of, it holds 1.6 quarts of oil. Okay, a little more oil makes it a little more resistant to breakdown because there's more oil there to break down. So that has extended oil intervals more than like a motocross based engine. So anyway, just something to think about. We've all talked about how oil is cheap. I'm not going to get into what kind of oil, other than stick with the viscosity that your manual recommends, and use a motorcycle oil so you don't ruin your wet clutch. Because your clutch is lubricated by your oil on a motorcycle. But there's lots of good oils out there now. But anyway, you could do oil analysis, but I think sometimes we can get, and I think that's a good idea, but sometimes we can get so hung up in that we, I don't know that we want to use oil analysis to extend your intervals too much. Although that is one of the good uses of it for industrial applications. But out there, what are you guys doing for oil changes? Are you following strictly the manual? Are you doing kind of what I'm talking about as far as frequency goes? Nice little deer in the road there. Where there's one, there's usually two. It's amazing how they go in the forest and they're gone. It always amazes me. You can see a deer so clearly, and then it goes in the forest and you can't even find it. And it's got to be running through the forest and you should be able to see the movement, but it's very difficult. Like one time, I think I told the story, I came upon a cougar. He was basking in the sun, and I thought it was quite a distance from the middle of the road to the edge of the highway, or to the forest line was like this. It was an area just like this, actually not far away from here. But anyway, and I thought I would follow him up into the forest, and that'd be really cool to watch a cougar run through the forest. Well, the minute he hit the edge of the forest line, he was gone out of my vision. I could not track him. I could not find him. I couldn't see him. It just really, really surprised me, honestly, how they blended in. But anyway, back to oil changes. It's such a simple thing. It's something we can all do. Now, I've got something that's pretty controversial, and I almost wasn't going to mention it, but I guess I'm going to. But hear me out. I tend to do a filter change every other oil change on my bike, and that's because I'm changing my oil at 5 hours. The manual recommends 10 or so. It's been a while since I looked, but it was more than 5. I'm doing about double frequency. So my point is, your filter, even per the manual, doesn't need to be changed necessarily at 5 hours. And aside from having engine issues, you know, I doubt you need to really change it at that soon of an interval. So I don't. I'll do what I call an oil dump, and I'll document it in my phone on my notes of maintenance. I'll do an oil dump at 5 hours, and the next change, which would be, you know, in a sense 10 hours for that filter, but the next 4 to 5 hours, I'll change that filter. So that's what I do. It makes oil changes a little less expensive, and I'm not doing anything negligent in my mind as far as anything that's bad for the motor. And the oil compartment, man, this is a great bike. This is really rough, and this is smooth on this bike, this Husky FE350s, and this has all stock suspension, but I'm just floating over this stuff. As I get older, I appreciate good suspension more. I'll just say that. But back to oil. So that's what I do. You don't have to do that. Maybe that's a bad idea. Tell me your thoughts. I know many people will say, yeah, change your filter every time. That's true. That's not a wrong thing. But if you're changing your oil fairly frequently, just dumping that quart out, putting it in, you're definitely gonna, you know, it's nice having that fresh viscosity, that oil freshened up like that. And you don't want to go extend the filter change more than what the manufacturer would recommend ever. And that's not a hard and fast rule. If I've done a bunch of trails and I feel like my riding has been hard on the oil because of heat and a lot of clutch feathering, okay, I'll change that filter out. It's easy enough. Takomoto makes a pretty cool filter that's kind of a magnetic filter I've been wanting to try out, and that you actually could pull out, wipe it off, and put it back in. But I need to get past the oil being moved through a mechanical filter like I'm used to, and moving towards, you know, something that's using magnets. So I'm just, my old school brain of having oil pass through something to catch, you know, clutch material or non-ferrous material is the thing that I'm struggling with. But I know their research is sound, and I know it works. I just have to get past that. I like the idea of the oil passing through a filter. All right, so those are my thoughts on oil changes. Now, like I said, depending on the amount of oil it takes, like my KTM 890, that thing held a lot of oil. It's been a while since I've done an oil change, but I think it was 3 quarts, give or take a little bit. I think actually it's a little over that, but it held quite a bit of oil. And that was a good thing. That's a bike that's an adventure bike. It goes long distances, and you want to keep that oil viscosity good. It needs oils used for cooling and lubrication. And so this is really bumpy through here. I'm just trying to make sure I'm dodging the right things. And so that bike, you need to change that frequently. No, but that's not a motocross engine. So, you know, definitely think about your application. Is it more of a motocross-based engine, or is it more of a street or adventure-based motor made for more mileage? And I would say the way you know for sure is look at what the manual is recommending first of all, but you know, look at what the roots of that bike are. Are they for motocross, or are they more for a dirt bike application, or is it more of an adventure, longer distance application? Like my 690 Enduro R, that was a cool bike that I had, KTM 690 Enduro R. I love that. It was just a little bit much in some of the tighter stuff that I get into. Just a little heavier than if I dropped the bike. It was hard to get it up sometimes. But I loved that bike. It was a really good one. But it also had more of a street-based motor. I mean, it was torquey. It was fun on the street. It was fun in the dirt too. But, you know, in my mind, I don't think you would need to change oil that often on that bike. So, you know, use your judgment. I'm not saying to do this on all bikes. Just, you know, I want you to think about each application. But bikes are expensive. Holy cow. I mean, you know, anywhere from $5,000 up to, you know, some cases 20 to 25, 30,000, depending on what you're getting. So you definitely want to protect these things, and I think that's why all of us are into, you know, what kind of oil and those things. You know, maintaining our bike, and make sure you clean your chain. I have a video where maybe I need to do it again, where I clean the chain with some WD-40 after most rides, not every ride. I've gone up this for a while. And that's that's an important part of your maintenance. A lot of guys will neglect their chain to where that thing's squeaking and rusty and dirty, and so you want to get that clean. This is a steep climb here, guys. It's dark. Oh man, I took a terrible line right up over the roots, and Husky did it. Roots again. Sorry, it's so dark in here. It is early. Anyway, what they have to do with this Husky is feather the clutch through this stuff. One of you guys out there taught me that trick where with a 350 I was having some stalling issues. Some of the mods that I did helped that for sure. But he said, hey, use your clutch more. Keep your throttle a little more constant and feather the clutch. And I'll tell you what, that was a really good tip. My stalling went down next to nothing after that. But oil changes, chain cleaning, and then follow up with a lubricant. You have an O-ring chain, keeping it clean, I think, is number one. But I like to use, some kind of a light lubricant that it doesn't attract dirt unless I'm driving off-road. I use like a KTM off-road lube, which I like. It seems to dry, offers some lubrication, but it doesn't attract a bunch of goop. And I don't have it fleeing off. So, anyway, just some things to think about with your bike. Just changing your oil, lubricating your chain. Those are some two things we can all do for our bike that makes a big difference. I'll do a video on that. I haven't done one on that with the chain. Keep it clean, keep it a light lubricant on it, but especially clean. And then keep it adjusted. I find though when I keep it clean and lubricated, it doesn't go out of adjustment that much, which makes sense, doesn't it? Nobody else riding yet today, but that makes sense. It's not even 7 o'clock yet. So chain lubrication, keeping it clean. Trying to think of anything else. Brakes or something else. You can bleed your brake lines every so often to keep the fluid fresh. Every few years. Some guys do it more often than that, but oh man, this is so loose. So like here I am idling the bike, I can see temperatures rising. That's why I like having a temperature gauge either on your radiator cap. Like you can see here, I have it on my radiator cap. I'm just outside the green, and I also have it up here. A little Trail Tech temperature gauge just has a radiator fin that goes in your radiator. So today, this is about my third ride on this oil change, because I've been just doing these little quick hour and a half outings, and a little single track, a little gravel road action. temperatures really don't get that high unless I'm doing this kind of stuff where I'm on the gas, down a hill, idling, trying to get some riding in up here before the rains are coming, and it'll be really muddy up here again. So think about how you're using your motorcycle. If it's not getting hard use, you could probably go more with what the manual's saying. And again, a quart of oil isn't that big of a deal compared to a new engine rebuild, which is thousands. And then, you know, I don't know. It's better if you can just not to have to crack that engine open more than you need to. And I think we all like the feeling of riding our bike when it's running good and it's fresh. It's a good feeling, so that's why we're all about oil changes. So with a motocross engine, you know, we'd probably track maintenance more in miles, or excuse me, in hours. But, you know, there's bikes where miles would make more sense. It's more an adventure application. Then we might start looking at every 6 months to a year, depending on mileage. Bunch of roots here. Oh, that's gnarly. There's where I'm feathering the clutch. I just keep the bike moving and it works great. I like running the golden tires on this bike. Oh, they're good. They feel good off-road. And when you're on-road, they do fine too. But I find their compliance off-road is really nice. I mean, I'm rolling through rocks and roots, and the suspension's doing the work, but I do think these tires help quite a bit. I'd love to run them on my Honda 300L, but the back is just too wide. It would hit the toolbox in the exhaust and all that kind of stuff. Man, this 350 amazes me with the torque. You know, I'm up second gear, just feathering up through that uphill. Well, yeah, what are your guys' thoughts? Oil changes. Feel free to chime in. Anybody else out there do that thing with a filter that I was discussing? And I should say too, I always inspect my filter. I crack open the little, you know, it kind of tends to be one of those cardboard OEM filters. I'll crack it open, look in there, see if I see any large debris. Also, I dump the oil into an oil pan, and I'll usually look through that to make sure that it's looking okay. Isn't any large debris? That small debris is normal, especially if you're breaking in the bike. And even when you're not, that small debris is normal, but you'll notice more of it when you're breaking a bike in. That's why I'm definitely a proponent of an early break-in oil change of a new bike. Like, I'm talking, I'll change it after an hour, and then I'll back off a little bit after that first change or two. But get that stuff out of that engine. You don't want that junk in your motor. You know, the dealer will talk about doing an oil change like it, oh man, you know, 500 miles, 10 hours. I mean, why leave that debris in your motor? Get it out of there. Yes, the filter will catch a large amount of it, but I'd rather have it out of the engine. These bikes, I mean, the horsepower these bikes make with a relatively small displacement is incredible. I mean, this bike, years ago, if you didn't have a lot of CCs, your bike would be kind of doggy. Really, it would be kind of slow. My first bikes were an XR80 or 75, and a Honda had a XL185 that I converted to a dirt bike because I found it was what I could afford when I was growing up as a kid. And I don't know what the horsepower ratings were, but that's the road I wanted right there. But it didn't need traction control, I'll say that. So it's just one of those things. These bikes make a lot of power. They're really relatively high strung. So we really need to take care of them, and oil changes is one of the most important parts. It's a deep one. Those little water bars, man, those can be deep sometimes. If I'm in the right mood, I'll just gas it and off the front end over it, but man, it's early. I don't think I've got that in me today. Trails are looking good. This is a good time of year. Man, no mud through there. That's amazing. This is always a total mud hole. See, like that, but it's over through the whole thing. But not right now. It's got some ruts from when it's muddy you gotta watch out for. And bikes are fun. Well, and that's why we like taking care of our bikes. They're fun. They do what we want them to do. We have an investment in them with the upgrades we put in them. We buy them and then we put a bunch of upgrades on them to make them work specifically how we like them to work, and we want to take care of them. That's fun. And it's great. You get towards the end of the riding season, and well, I shouldn't say riding season because we ride in the wet too, but the trails are well maintained and dry, and you just wish it could go on forever. But in the Pacific Northwest, it just doesn't. You know, this trail closes out pretty good up here. I think I'm gonna take the highway for a little bit. Gonna turn around. Easy. So complex. They run really good. I want to take care of that. I'm a short guy, 5'7"-ish. When I love taller bikes because of the suspension and how they feel. They go over any terrain, but when I got to turn around in a tight area or something, suddenly it's like, ugh. I suddenly realize how tall the bike is. Okay. Probably is good for my hip flexibility though, having to get on and off this thing. But once I'm riding, I don't think about the height at all. Nice to have the ground clearance to roll over everything that you don't want to get hung up on. Had to flip my face guard up there. Wearing my enduro helmet and it's getting hot. It's a little uphill here. So it's been a few, this is I think my third or fourth ride on this oil change, and I've done a lot of this kind of stuff, slipping the clutch. So I'm probably getting into that 5 to 8 hour oil change time, so I'll be changing my oil after this ride. Wow, it's tore up and loose. We're uphill. These golden tires do hook up nicely. I especially love the front. You run the narrower one, not the fatty front. And I love that. It bites. It doesn't climb out of ruts. Has a little bit of shock absorption, but it has good traction. I really like the fatty. Or excuse me, I like the narrow golden tire, not the fatty. I think the fatty, if I didn't have to ride in mud ruts, I'd probably like it more. Tempted to take that log every time, but by myself today, and I don't need an issue just because I went over a log. All right. So, yeah, I'm just trying to give you some tools to think about your oil changes. But if you just stick with what the manual says, hey, nothing wrong with that. At least you're maintaining your bike. But I've encouraged you just to maybe think about it a little bit. Use your, use your own thought processes to see if you can make sense of what's going to be best for you. All right. Well, that was fun. Like, I'm up here a ways, and sometimes I think, okay, there's nobody else up here. I'll just ride around, not look at when I pull out on the highway, but man, that's a mistake. You can just have you can just have just the right timing where you're pulling out as a car's coming. So even though it may seem remote, always stop and act like you're in town. Videos, so I hate to belabor the point, but knock on wood, so far I have not had any internal engine issues related to wear. And I understand, I understand certain bikes can be predisposed to issues, but so I've gotten lucky. I just had bikes that didn't have those kinds of things going on. But I haven't had any engines that used oil. My valves don't go out of adjustment. I know if enough miles, they certainly would, but it's such a simple thing. So I think it really works. And many of you who watch the channel know I've had a lot of bikes. I don't do videos on some of my quads and things that I have. I'm on a 250 for the kids, and a 400EX that I've had a long time. And those motors, I just don't have problems with them. And why is that? Well, I think it's the oil changes. Because I run them, I ride them. I don't necessarily take it. I wouldn't say I take it easy on them. I don't bounce off the rev limiter, but there's no reason to do that with how these things are made. But I really think it's just the simple maintenance that's done on them. And air filters, I keep clean air filters on them. Air filters too, I mean, that depends on conditions a lot. Like today, I'm riding solo, so I'm not eating anybody else's dust. And I'm not going to change my air filter after today. It's fine. I just know it is. I can crack it open, take a peek, and it won't be dirty. But let's say in a pack of riders, I'm 2 or 3 or 4 back. I'm eating a lot of dust as a rider. Certainly, I know my bike's eating a lot of dust. My bike will probably get a new air filter after that, or at least clean the one I always have an air filter waiting in the wings. That's what I love about it. Dual sports, the pavement stops and you can just pick up your speed if you want to. And you get nature, you get to look at nature. I love it. But anyway, that's something to be said about that. It's just, they say the proof is in the pudding. Hey, if you're something as simple as oil changes can keep you from having to, do expensive engine maintenance, and the spike's nimble. I love how narrow it is between my knees. It's just nice and narrow. Feels like a whole rocket ship. I know it's a good bike when I forget I'm on a bike and I just feel like I'm flying. Not thinking about suspension or anything like that. Just flying through the air and the bike responds to all my inputs. Alright, well, I think I've belabored the oil discussion. Thanks for riding along. I hope it helps. I hope this helps somebody out there. And oil changes are something you can do yourself. It's very, very simple. Just take your time. If you're not sure about how to tighten up a drain plug, let's say, use a torque wrench early on until you get a feel for it. You'll get a feel for it if you do enough of them. And then you can get really good with, if you got, one bike you mainly ride. Like I've done a lot of oil changes on this Husky, and man, I have to admit, I'm pretty quick. I come home from the ride. If it's not dirty, I'll stick an oil pan under it, pull a drain plug, let it drain out, and then walk back by a few minutes later, clean the plug up, stick it back in. You don't have to do them all at once. And then later maybe fill it with oil, change the filter. I mean, you can find you get a little bit of rhythm. But typically my protocol is, wash the bike down when I get home, let it dry, blow it off the leaf blower, hit the chain with a WD-40 to displace water off the chain so there's no rusting going on. Follow with the lube later. And then if I need to do an oil change, I generally will try to do it on a clean bike. I mean, I always do it on a clean bike, to be honest. I don't want to have dirt and stuff penetrating the engine from the outside. And then once you get to know your own bike on how to do the oil changes, it's very, very easy. It's repetitive, so you can do it. You don't even have to think about it. Put some music on, relax, sip on your favorite beverage. You can kind of make it, it's almost almost therapy to ride. But I get a little bit of benefit when I work on the bike, when it's easy, something easy project like that. If it's tearing a motor out of the bike and a major repair, okay, that's a bit of a different story altogether. But just the simple stuff is fun. I would encourage you guys to watch Dirt Bike TV channel. I think that's Jay. I've learned a lot about oil changes from him, as far as putting grease on the drain plugs so that they don't seize in there. And then he talks a lot about frequency. Oh, a nice sunrise there. There's some of those thunderheads that are trying to move in. Really weird. Supposed to really have some intense rain later today. That's why I went early this morning. I could ride in the rain, but hey, if you don't have to, why do it? Such an amazing age where you don't even have to watch the weather. You just look at your cell phone. For those of you who are middle-aged, I remember that you probably remember that you used to have to know, find your weather channel and make time and watch it the night before to know what was going on, or listen to a radio or something, weather forecast, but not anymore. Just look at your phone. I take all that stuff for granted, that's for sure. But anyway, Jay at the Dirt Bike channel, he talks about, he's big on oil change frequency. Whoa, a little hot into that corner. And he tears these engines down. So I really respect what he says, and it supports what I think works. But he is big on oil change frequency. I mean, and I think he's right. And he talks about more of oil change frequency above what kind of oil you use, and I think that's true, because you're removing the mechanical debris from your oil. Now, I go somewhere in the middle. I change oil pretty frequently, but I do try to use a good quality synthetic motorcycle oil. But I don't argue with what he says at all, because it works, and he's got years of experience to base it on. And I've always wanted to use like a diesel oil, but we have a diesel truck it's older, that we run and for towing, and so I have some of that around, and I've been so close to putting it in, and there's something I just can't do it. I don't know. I mean, I know it would be okay. I know it would, and one of these days I'm just going to run it and just prove myself that I can run it. But as bad as I want to, I just can't do it when motorcycle oil isn't that much more. But and again, I want to be clear. I know he isn't wrong, and he wouldn't steer anybody wrong. And he's torn down lots of engines to support what he says. Man, this is little straight stretch here. Got to just rip down it. You know how sometimes you do the single track, sometimes you just got to rip down a straight stretch. This isn't completely straight, but you can straighten the corners out a little. Man, this thing just rips. I love how you can just flow through the edge of each corner and make a kind of a twisty corner straight like this. But yeah, this has enough of a curve. I better lose more speed. Man, see, I want to be nice to this engine. I'm revving it. Yeah. That is fun. Oh, that is fun. Okay, so, you know, I don't mind revving a motor, but if you're going to do that to it, I want to take care of it. Oh man, the gravel roads are fun too. I like all riding, but I do like opening up a bike on a straight stretch like that, where you got some, I know all you do is the same thing. You got a gravel road ahead of you. It's got a few mild turns, and you can, you know, you can see that nobody's there, so you can straighten out the twisties and kind of bend that road straight. Camping, it's a good place to camp. I get to eat my own dust because I gotta go back. It is dusty out here, but that's gonna change in a few hours when all those thunderstorms hit. Yeah, right. Oh, look, this is how dusty it is. I mean, this. I'm sure my lens isn't getting dusty. There we go. Oh, especially when you're ripping, like. I mean, look. If you look behind me here, I'm leaving just a plume of dust. Which is kind of fun. Now, if there's somebody behind me, I would try to do it a little differently, but there isn't. So I'm just gonna lay it down. Quite as fast this time. Yeah, good stuff. Feeling that acceleration feels so good. So look at all this dust back here. It won't be long. These gravel roads will be wet. It'll be muddy. If we go off a gravel road, it'll be mud. I sound like a golden tire salesman. I'm not. But it's nice, those tires, when they're in the mud, they work reasonably well. I mean, actually, what am I saying? They work really well. So for the Pacific Northwest up here where it's wet a lot, I really have gravitated towards those. Now, if you're in an area where it doesn't get so muddy and sloppy, then, man, there's other choices for sure. But having something that'll grip on a wet piece of wood, like a root, is important up here. And wet rocks, they're so slippery. And these tires do that. Now, do they hold up great on pavement? They do okay. You know, I'm sure there's harder compounds, but they're not going to do well on roots and rocks that are wet. I got a little spider on my room here. There. Man, this 350, I have to admit, I love it. I've had it since 22, and we're almost to 20 or 24. If we're watching this later, that'll date it. And it's always interesting to hear when things are being done. We're almost through 24, which is getting towards the end, and I still love it as much as when I bought it. In fact, I love it more because I got the right mods on it, and it just works so good. Oh, someone's beating some deer there with those apples, I guess. Yeah, the 350, what I like about it is you can use a mid-range, like right here, or if you have a situation that allows it. Got a thistle on my back of my hand. I was hugging that edge a little close. What a day. Hate to rush through this too much because I'm having fun. Or, you know, you can use the top end and it's just such a rocket ship, you can, it's hard to keep it on the road. I'm looking for that 7th gear. Didn't need it, but you can just hear how it just revs. And people come around here in the wrong lane all the time, so I always like to be careful. Thistle off there. I can flick it off. Yep. Mother Nature has some really good ways to transport themselves. Like, I mean, a thistle. What a great idea. Something runs by you, sticks in your fur or your hand, and then you take it somewhere else, dump it, and now those seeds got to move hundreds of yards or feet, or in many cases miles from where they once were, to propagate. Pretty smart. Alright, well, hope you all are doing well. Appreciate ya. Just thought I'd talk about oil frequency. I hope it saves you some money in the long run if you apply this stuff. And don't feel like you have to do what I say, of course. Come up with your own method. I think if you have a method that's consistent for maintenance, then generally I find my buddies that do that, it works. Just don't want to go too long where you're not changing your oil at all. Once metal gets hot, it turns kind of a color a little bit, or it gets scorched instead of polished, and then it gets pitted and it starts to break down. So maintenance is important. You have to stay on top of it. Heat is a is an issue with oil, and so is, particulate matter, and it breaks down. It breaks down from heat too, and shear. And a motorcycle engine it does all those things. The gearbox shears stuff, lots of pressure, and then I'm thinking too much and I'll focus on my writing. And then they get hot. You can get on single track and you might have to beat your way through a tough little area for a while, and that motor gets hot. You hear the fan kicking on and off. If you're not running a fan, well, I'm talking about on your radiator, definitely run one, because I think those are lifesavers. I really feel like when manufacturers don't give those to you, like out of the box, it doesn't really make sense. Maybe if it's a motocross application and the bike is just going out ripping a few laps and then it's done, fine. But for most normal people who are riding on-road, off-road, starting, stopping, getting stuck, revving the engine, it's a really good thing to have, to keep the engines cool even when you're not moving or moving slowly. And then the fan can keep track of, how you have it set, can keep track of your engine temperature. Alright, well, that's all I got. I appreciate you all. Keep riding, take care of your bikes, take care of yourself. And enjoy this life. Enjoy the people around you, the relationships. They're so important. It's pretty up here. Alright, signing off. But it really is good to have a temperature gauge. I mean, it lets you know if something's wrong, but it also lets you know when things are going right. But it really helps guide my maintenance. If I'm on a ride where I'm getting a lot of high temperatures, hey, maybe I'll change oil when I get back. If I'm not, I might extend that out a little further in my oil change intervals, my oil change spectrum. So I don't know. That's just something to think about. But even without a temperature gauge, if you're beating through single track, stop and go, fans kicking on and off, okay, your bike's getting hot. You don't need a temperature gauge to tell you that. If you're moving like this, moving down a gravel road, not start and stop, okay, your bike probably isn't working that hard. Mine, like right now, basically 120 degrees, 130 degrees, 135, it's not working that hard. I mean, at least from an oil perspective. So anyway, just something to think about. Think about getting a temperature gauge, or not just pay attention to what your motor's doing. And that can help you make intelligent choices about your oil change intervals. Like, what are some of the tests that they do when they check oil? Hey, they cook that oil. They see if they can get it to evaporate. They check the viscosity when it's hot. Their heat breaks down oil. We know that. That's kind of a fun feeling. Is just drift in the corner with the front and back tires a little bit. Is that loose? It's a fine line. But it really is good to have a temperature gauge. I mean, it lets you know if something's wrong, but it also lets you know when things are going right. But it really helps guide my maintenance. If I'm on a ride where I'm getting a lot of high temperatures, hey, maybe I'll change oil when I get back. If I'm not, I might extend that out a little further in my oil change intervals, my oil change spectrum. So I don't know. That's just something to think about. But even without a temperature gauge, if you're beating through single track, stop and go, Fans kicking on and off. Okay, your bike's getting hot. You don't need a temperature gauge to tell you that. If you're moving like this, moving down a gravel road, not start and stop, okay, your bike probably isn't working that hard. Mine, like right now, basically 120 degrees, 130 degrees, 135, it's not working that hard. I mean, at least from an oil perspective. So anyway, just something to think about. Think about getting a temperature gauge, or not just pay attention to what your motor's doing. And that can help you make intelligent choices about your oil change intervals. Like, what are some of the tests that they do when they check oil? They cook that oil. They see if they can get it to evaporate. They check the viscosity when it's hot. Their heat breaks down oil. We know that. That's kind of a fun feeling. Is just drift in the corner with the front and back tires a little bit. Is that loose? It's a fine line. Oh man, just kind of a side note. These clouds are moving in. Usually moving from the west. They're moving in from the east, so it's kind of interesting. The atypical weather here, and I can smell the rain is coming. I only mention that because I know you all know what that smells like. It's a unique smell, and it's gonna rain. I think any second. I think I'm gonna be at home, but I can just smell it, and I'm sure it's something to do with humidity. There's a thunderstorm coming, so there might be something to do with charged particles in the air. I don't know, but somebody can comment on what that is. But yeah, I can smell the rain's coming. That sounds kind of stupid, but yeah, it's coming. In the distance there, maybe these clouds won't show up, but you can see the rain is drifting down in blankets, sheets of rain out of those clouds over there. Yep, definitely smell. I think that's what's fun about motorcycles is you're out in the elements. You're out in them. So you smell things like that. You feel it. Which has pros and cons. Like right now I'm not in it and I'm loving it, but if I were under one of those blankets of rain, I'd probably be going, okay, let's get home. Oh, it's starting to rain. Here I am on wet pavement. This is the first rain of the season for a while, so man, at least highway can get slick. So, when you're on pavement, man, first rain, there's oils and stuff. Be careful. I've hit pavement that I couldn't believe how slick it was. I still think it's cool I smelled the rain before it started to rain. And I'm basically home. So anyway, watch out for wet pavement. Just take it a little easier on the throttle. Don't lean super hard. And, just be aware of wet pavement. All right. Have fun. Be safe. Keep riding. Until next time. So here we are. We're back now. Bike's a little dusty. It'll get a little wash today, and it'll get an oil change. Oil and filter change. How's oil looking? Yeah, I don't know. It's adequate level, but we're getting close to 8 to 10 hours on it. We're going to change it. So here I am back at the shop after the ride. Really not that big of a deal. You just, pull out your screen, pull out your plug, let the oil puke out. We'll come over there, take 2 screws out, change a filter, fill it back with oil, and that's pretty easy. And this is what I expected to find. You find a little bit of debris on your plug here. Just that's normal. That's good. No big chunks in the screen here, just a few little pieces. We'll get that cleaned out, and that's the way you want it. And then when I drained my oil, it's kind of hard to tell because there's a black drain pan, but it looked good. It looked golden.
You can see a little bit of oil dripping off right here. It's kind of a golden color. It's not nasty. So that's what you want. That motor is happy. So give your bike some love now and then with an oil change.